Vision without action is a daydream. Action without vision is a nightmare. Japanese proverb. Sit with that for a second. Hiroshi Takahashi didn't sleep much in the winter of 1949. He was a line supervisor at a small parts factory in Nagoya, one of the thousands of half-rebuilt workshops scattered across a country still picking through its own wreckage. The war had taken 4 years. The bombing had taken most of the city. And now, 4 years after surrender, the factory where Hiroshi worked was producing components that broke after a few uses, falling behind American factories by a ratio that felt almost insulting. He wasn't failing because he was careless. He cared enormously. He came in early. He pushed his team hard. He set enormous targets. Every Monday felt like a new beginning. Every Friday felt like quiet defeat. The numbers weren't moving. The gap wasn't closing. And then, one afternoon, a translator walked in with a foreign engineer carrying a single sheet of paper, a diagram, almost childishly simple, and said 4 words that Hiroshi would never forget. Small steps. Every day. What happened next didn't just save his factory. It saved the entire Japanese economy. And it might be the exact thing you've been missing. Let's talk about you for a second. Because you've been here before. The start is always electric. You feel it. That specific kind of clarity you only get when you're completely fed up with the old version of yourself. You build the whole system. The new sleep schedule, the workout plan, the reading list, the journaling habit, the meal prep. All of it starting Monday. And it works for a while. Then one night you're tired and you skip the journal, then the workout, then the meal prep falls apart. And there it is, that cold, familiar voice in the back of your head. You broke it again. You're back to zero. You'll start over when things calm down. But things never calm down. And you never start at zero. You start slightly more ashamed than last time. Slightly less likely to believe yourself when you say this time is different. This isn't a character flaw. This is a design flaw. You were handed a broken model of how change actually works. And the evidence for that has been sitting in post-war Japan for over 70 years. In the summer of 1950, an American statistician named W. Edwards Deming stood in front of Japan's most influential business leaders in Tokyo, a man so unknown in his home country that his own government hadn't bothered to send him. He was there at the invitation of the Japanese Union of Scientists and Engineers. What he taught them had nothing to do with grand visions or aggressive targets. He taught them about systems, specifically about how systems improve through cycles of small, deliberate adjustments. Plan something small. Do it. Check what happened. Adjust. Repeat. The PDCA cycle. And then do it again tomorrow. The Japanese didn't just learn this. They made it a philosophy. They named it Kaizen. 2 characters, Kai, meaning change, and Zen, meaning good. Not revolution, not transformation. Just good change, continuously. Toyota became the clearest proof of concept. Through the 1950s and into the 1960s, they embedded Kaizen into every layer of the company. Any worker, not just management, any worker on the floor, could halt the production line the moment they identified a problem, not to report it upward, to fix it, document it, and improve the standard for tomorrow. By 1980, Toyota had a defect rate so low that American manufacturers flew to Japan just to watch them work, convinced there had to be some secret technology involved. There wasn't. Just small improvements, made every day by ordinary people. That gap between you and the person you want to become, it's not closed by one great leap. It never was. Here's what the science says about why. Teresa Amabile, a researcher at Harvard Business School, spent years tracking the inner work lives of hundreds of professionals, their daily moods, motivations, emotions, and looking for patterns. What she expected to find was that big wins drove performance. What she actually found shook the field. The single most powerful driver of positive emotion, motivation, and long-term progress was not achievement. It was the perception of forward movement, even tiny, almost invisible forward movement. She called it the progress principle. The brain doesn't need a finish line to feel momentum. It needs evidence, any evidence, that it moved forward today compared to yesterday. And that evidence triggers dopamine. Not the flood you get from a big win, but a quiet, steady release that wires the brain to repeat the behavior. Small progress, then more small progress, then more. Not because you're disciplined, because your brain is chasing the feeling of moving. Here's the catch. All or nothing thinking severs this loop completely. When you go from maximum effort to total collapse, your brain doesn't build anything. It just oscillates between a high it can't sustain and a shame it can't metabolize. Kaizen works not because it's philosophically elegant. It works because it matches the actual architecture of human motivation. So what does a real Kaizen reset look like? The first principle is this: shrink the change until resistance disappears. Not until it's comfortable, until it's almost laughably small. You want to exercise? The goal is not 45 minutes. The goal is to put on your shoes. That's it. The psychology here is precise. You're not training your body yet. You're training your identity. Every time you follow through on even a tiny commitment, you cast a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. Enough votes and the identity changes. The behavior follows. The second principle: measure direction, not distance. When you restart a goal for the fourth time, it feels like you're back at the beginning. But you're not. You have information you didn't have before. You know what conditions break your routine. You know what you were telling yourself the last 2 times you quit. That's not failure. That's the exact data Kaizen is built on. A Toyota worker who finds a defect on the line isn't punished for finding it. The defect is the discovery. You're not behind. You're better informed. Are you pointed in the right direction today? That's the only question. The third principle is the hardest to accept. Better than yesterday is the only standard that matters. Not better than your ideal self. Not better than the person you follow on the internet. Better than who you were at this time yesterday. That's the whole standard. Some days, better than yesterday means you drank 1 more glass of water. Some days, it means you had a hard conversation you'd been avoiding. The scale doesn't matter. The direction does. And a 1% improvement, compounded daily, becomes a transformation so large that in a year, you won't recognize the person who started. Hiroshi Takahashi didn't transform his factory overnight. He took Deming's diagram home. He picked one thing, one small process that was creating defects, and he changed it by the smallest measurable amount. Then he watched. Then he adjusted. Then he improved by 1 more small increment the following week. 3 years later, his output had tripled. not from a heroic effort, from the accumulation of decisions small enough that none of them, individually, felt like anything at all. Japan became the second largest economy in the world within 2 decades of that shift. A country with no natural resources, no Marshall Plan funding, and cities that had been reduced to ash. Built back quietly, one small improvement at a time. And so here is the question I want to leave resting in your mind. Not to push you toward action, but to genuinely sit with, what if the life you keep trying to start dramatically is already being built? In the small, almost invisible things you do tomorrow morning. Not with a bang, with Kaizen.